Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with the books beside my bed video. I will say I've had a 24 hours of traveling, and instead of not getting this video filmed, I am filming this sans makeup and with a blocked ear and some other things that are going on. So if it's a little bit strange, I apologize, but the other option was not to film this until Monday night, and then it probably wouldn't have gone up till Tuesday. So I'm just gonna get everything done today and then get the rest of the week's filming done as soon as I can. So apologies, but you know, this is how life goes sometimes. It was a good thing though, the traveling. I was going up to Country Vic to see my family because it was my cousin's 21st and it was a really great night, and it was really lovely to spend time with them this morning, and I've only just gotten back now and it's like 3:30 in the afternoon on Sunday. So let's talk about books, because books are great. So for those of you who are new to my channel, Books Beside My Bed is a weekly video that I put up talking about the books I've read over the last 7 days. This reading week is from the 16th until the 22nd of September. I read 5 books this week. I read a total of 1,897 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 187 books. It was also the second and final week of Tome Infinity and Beyond, the readathon that I was co-hosting, that was created by the channel formerly known as Brushing Bookends and now known as Tome Infinity, which is super, super cool. It was a really great readathon. I had a great time. I managed to meet most of my challenges. The only thing I didn't do was complete the extra 3 ships, but that was always an if I have time, and it was sort of an unrealistic expectation really, but I got through the rest of my challenges and I ended up on Mars. So I have completed this readathon as a Martian, which apparently is going to be very important for the next round of the readathon. I don't know all the details yet, but it sounds very, very cool. The first book that I read this week was The Lost Plot by Genevieve Cogman. This is book 4 in the Invisible Library series. It was published in 2017 by Pan Macmillan, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I read this for the challenge Neptune, which was to read a sci-fi book with fantasy elements or a fantasy book with sci-fi elements, and because this has a whole lot of world hopping as the main character Irene travels from the mysterious library that sort of exists in between worlds and travels to different worlds, I sort of took that as a bit of a sci-fi twist, because there's also some space travel sort of in this book, but I can't really say how unless you've read the series, because that would kind of spoil it. In The Lost Plot, we follow main character Irene. She is a librarian. She hunts for books for the library, an organization that she works for, and this library collects books from multiple versions of Earth in order to help stabilize all of the multiple versions of Earth. So they keep a complete collection, and it also secures the connection between the library and these worlds. Irene and her apprentice Kai are basically out looking for a potential rogue librarian who may have found himself embroiled in a dragon plot, and in this series there are dragons and there are fae, and so they go after this librarian, and it sends them to an alternate Earth in about 1920s New York, and it is really, really fun, really entertaining. I love Kai and Irene, and I really so badly want there to be a relationship between the two of these characters. I really do, because they have great banter. It is just so fantastic. So I really love this series. I'm really looking forward to the next book, and hopefully it will not take me a year to read the next book because it's coming out very soon, I think. Then I read Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. This was published in 2009 by Viking, I believe, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I have only read one other Jasper Fforde book, The Air Affair, and I do really like his writing style, and I know quite a few people who absolutely adore his books. I read this for the challenge Uranus Read a Book with humor in it, and I knew that I would have some closely aligned humor to mine in this story. For example, the very first line of this book reads, "It began with my father not wanting to see the last rabbit and ended up with my being eaten by a carnivorous plant." And I honestly read that line and I could not stop laughing for about 3 minutes. So it fit the challenge for me. This is a very complicated book, and I know it's quite a popular one with people and notorious because it is the first book in a series, and no second book has been released yet, and this was first published in 2009. So I applaud those people and their patience for sticking with the series and still desperately wanting one. Shades of Grey is set in a world that is very much like our own and is potentially our world, but it is very dystopian, and the world has faded colours. So the population basically try and enhance this world through synthetic colours, and every human being is grouped into a color faction, and that sort of determines the hierarchy and your social standing and the jobs that you can achieve based on how well you see colors. So if you see more red, you are a red, and if you see more purple, you are a purple, and so on. It's not that part of it's not so complicated. Eddie, who is the main character, is a red, and he really desperately wants to move up in society, but he is in a bit of trouble, and so he's following his father around to this small remote town where he finds himself embroiled in quite a few little schemes going on, and he gets caught up in a whole lot of things that he sort of has to try and dig his way out of, and he really struggles to do that. It is funny, it is adventurous, it is complex and thought-provoking, and I highly recommend it. Then I read Shadowmoon by Dominic Dully. This was published in 2018 by Joe Fletcher Books, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a debut science fiction novel, and I mean, look at that cover. I love this cover so much. I read it for the Challenge Saturn Reader book with a circle on the cover. Circle. This is also quite complex. It's very easy to read, but it's quite complex because it's set in space, and it follows Ori, who lives with her younger brother and her father on a spaceship, and they're essentially thieves, or scammers, and they work together as a unit until something happens to her father and her brother is kidnapped, and Ori is left to try and pick up the pieces and try and find her brother. And she gets caught up in all sorts of political intrigue that exist in this sort of universe. And there are aliens, and there are space battles, and there's just so much going on. And that's probably why I didn't rate it higher, because it was very fast paced, it was very action filled, and I love that aspect of it. But it just felt like there was possibly too much going on just for a first book. It could have been drawn out a little bit or fleshed out a little bit more. But it was a really good first novel, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I am interested to read any follow-up books to this one. So yeah, that's Shadowmoon. Then I read A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This was first published in 2011. This edition was published in 2016 by Walker Books, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read this for the Challenge Jupiter Read a story with a giant in it. Giant tree monster thing. This book is the illustrated version, and I just adored it. The illustrations are gorgeous, and they were done by Jim Kay. It is the story of Connor, who is a young boy whose mother is very ill with cancer, and it is about how he deals with her illness, and it represents in this sort of magical realism way where he is visited by this monster at nighttime at 12:07 every night. And the monster tells him stories, and the stories are there to sort of help Connor, if not understand, then to realize that the world is perhaps different to what he thinks it might be. And the monster wants something in return from him. And the whole story is just funny and heartbreaking and gorgeous. And yes, I did cry for a little bit. I really want to watch the movie now because I haven't seen the film, and I've got it on my iTunes. So I will be watching that very soon. But it was just gorgeous, and I'm so glad that I read it, and I have this lovely edition of it. The final book that I read this week was Star Wars Thrawn Alliances, which was published in 2018 by Century, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. To be fair, I may be slightly biased in that anything that has Grand Admiral Thrawn in it, I tend to give 5 stars just because he's one of my favourite characters in the expanded universe, because I just love the way that he thinks. Take that as you will. I read this for the final challenge for Mars, read a book with aliens in it. Aliens. This story actually has 2 timelines and 3 character point of views. So there is the present timeline, which is post-Solo, pre-Rogue One timeline. And that is when Thrawn and Darth Vader are thrown together to work on solving the mystery of a disturbance in the Force by the Emperor. So they're paired up to work together because apparently they have worked together before. And what we find out in the story is that they have worked together before, except Thrawn was working with Anakin Skywalker in the past to search for Padme, who had gone out on a mission and had disappeared. So Thrawn doesn't know that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. It's how these two work together, and there's quite a bit of animosity between the two of them. Darth Vader is sort of himself, and there's a little bit of a power struggle in terms of his place with the Emperor. And then there's Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is very confident in himself and doesn't feel threatened at all by Darth Vader and his relationship with the Emperor. He just does what he does. And I think that's really unique because he's a very calm character who thinks things through and prizes thought and intelligence over always getting things right the first time. And I think that is what makes him a character that I really enjoy reading about. So I really enjoyed this. It was a good, fun read. Timothy Zahn always has the easiest Star Wars books for me to read. The writing style is great. So yes, 5 out of 5 stars for me. So those are the books that I read this week. If you have read any of these books, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on them. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.